Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English-language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Upsettingly, disgustingly, we're still talking about humanitarian pauses. APAN, the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network that I lead, did some polling. You can find that on our website, apan.org.au, apan.org.au, and we found by a factor of more than 2-1, Australians want our government to demand an immediate ceasefire. By a factor of more than 2-1, they want a ceasefire immediately, which proves that our government is out of step with its constituency. I'm very, very honoured to be joined by a dear, dear friend of mine, a dear friend of the Palestinian community, an honorary Palestinian, Adel Salman, who's the president of the Islamic Council of Victoria. Good morning, Adel.
Good morning, Sabah.
Adel, you've had a long and principled stand with the Palestinian people, and we want to talk about all of that. But I want to talk first about an incident that really hurt me, and I know how much it hurt you. Can you talk to us about your first attempt to visit Palestine?
Look, that was a extremely upsetting experience for me. I was invited to attend a conference in Palestine. The subject was Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Palestine. And it was an international conference. People from all over the world were flying in. It was approved. Our entry visas were approved. All of us turned up in Amman, and then we were told the Israeli government or officials had cancelled all of our entry visas. It was devastating. I was actually devastating. We tried our best to actually find a way to convince the authorities to rescind their decision. That obviously fell on deaf ears. A number of us, somewhat defiantly, we decided we're still going to go to, across the bridge. We're going to try and, we're going to go to the border crossing. We're going to try and get in. And we did. And we went, and it was a great experience for me because I got to see what the experience of everyday Palestinians are trying to get back to their homes and waiting in queues and being treated with such disrespect by young, gun-toting, soldiers, and seeing people who have lived there all their lives and being told or being asked, why are you coming? Well, I'm coming back to my home. And to see that and to see the way that people are so disrespected and humiliated for just doing a simple thing of returning to their homes was a real eye-opener for me. So in many ways, I did get to see life or the experience of everyday Palestinians firsthand. And it was a very small price to pay. I mean, I was treated with disrespect. Literally my passport was thrown in my face. I had to wait for hours for the bus to take me back to where I need to go. But it was a small price to pay for me to actually see what is that experience with Palestinians.
Yeah, it's the everyday reality of Palestinians. Adel, I wanted to set the scene for, you've had the first-person experience of Palestine. But since then, you've led the ICV and been very, very unequivocal in your support of Palestinian rights, Palestinian justice. Can you speak to the ICV's work and your position there?
Even before I joined the ICV has always been very strongly supportive of Palestine. But it is fair to say that since I joined, we've sort of taken it further. It's a core issue for the ICV because it's a core issue for the Muslim community. And we are just representing the views, the deeply held views of Muslims across the community, regardless of their background. The issue of Palestine, and I was saying this at a fundraising dinner last night, it's a visceral issue for us. When we see what is happening to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and it's happened so often over many years, it is something that actually evokes such strong emotions, such strong, deeply held emotions. We want to do something. We want to help whatever way we can. The ICV can play a part, as APAN does and as other organisations, as individuals do. So the ICV, we've tried to channel community sentiment as best we can. We've supported the work of APAN and other organisations. We'll continue to do that. And, we are ready to do what is required to actually get our voice and our position out there into the public domain.
Again, listeners, we're speaking to Mr. Adel Salman. Adel Salman from the Islamic Council of Victoria. Adel is the president of the ICV. Adel, yesterday's fundraising dinner, it's very hard for us to celebrate. I know, like me, you've been struggling sleepless nights, seeing, the death and carnage, the slaughterhouse, seeing our elected officials not representing our voice, the exclusion of our communities from participation in this country. But last night was a little bit of a heartwarming opportunity, a little bit of a distraction from the misery that we've suffered for 35 days now. Tell us a little bit about last night.
Oh, look, last night was quite a unique event in many ways. It was a room full of very successful people from a medical background and other supporters as well. And it was an opportunity, I think, for everybody to contribute in whatever way they can to supporting the Palestinian people. The number of speakers, including, of course, yourself, Nasser, I spoke for a little bit, and others speakers as well, and all were speaking about how we can support Palestinian cause, Palestinian people, not just now, but into the future. And this is a message, I think, that resonated, that the bombs will stop falling, but the oppression will continue. And our job in community roles and whatever roles we play is to maintain the rage, because this is not going away. We need to keep this as a forefront issue, top of mind issue for Australians and for the Australian government. It was wonderful to see so many people from so many different backgrounds last night. Everyone can play a part of it.
Indeed. And we raised some much-needed funds. So thank you to everybody from the medical associations that attended last night. It was really very heartwarming. The reports now are over 4,500 children have been killed. The death toll is well over 11,000 now. There's thousands missing, presumed buried under rubble. Israel continues the slaughter unchecked. Overnight, Macron made in an interview, called for Israel to kill less women and children, whilst ensuring that he had caveated everything with Israel's right to self-defense, which we know is Israel's right to perpetuate a genocide. How long do you think before we see a change in our government's policy? Do you have any hope? I know some Muslim leaders have been speaking to our parliamentarians. Is there any optimism or sign there?
Look, I think also the politicians are very clear about what they should do, what's the right thing to do. But I think political imperatives stop them from taking that necessary step. And there's a lot of weasel words, a lot of caveats. I mean, I think Australia, if the United States calls for a ceasefire, then I think immediately you'll see Australia calling for a ceasefire, which is very disappointing. We'd like to think the Australian government would be leading on this, pushing the United States to call for immediate ceasefire. Sadly, the reality is that they probably won't. The sad reality for us here in Australia is that the Australian government is still heavily influenced by the Zionist narrative. We have a lot of work to do to try and change that, and that's not something that will change overnight. The events of the last few weeks are actually pushing it in the right direction. We may not win this round, but inshallah, we'll win the next round. And I think that's the challenge for us.
And it's something that we have to keep working on, and we spoke about it yesterday, Adel, is that the barbarous assault that is occurring on Palestine today, that we need to be harnessing this energy for when things get back to quote-unquote normal. And quote-unquote normal for this year, from the start of January to the 6th of October, was 250 Palestinians getting killed, a Palestinian every 18 hours. That quote-unquote normal can't be normal. that once this killing spree is over, once this genocide is over, that we harness the energy that we have today in the streets, the energy we have in political spaces, the energy we have in op-eds and letter-writing campaigns, that we harness this energy and continue to mobilise so that it doesn't go back to Israel's normal, which is abnormal. Adel, from your perspective, the Islamic community, and you spoke about how the connection is visceral, what can we be doing from an action point of view? I mean, a lot of Muslims, a lot of Australian Muslims are possibly first-generation Muslims. Increasingly, we're making our own second and third generations, Adel, you and I. They are more cognizant of their place in our democracy and in how it works, and activated in universities, etc., and their unions. How do we make our first-generation Muslims, who predominantly have come from despotic-type regimes, where they fear the state, they fear police, how do we get them activated politically?
Well, I think you sort of mentioned what, a potential solution there, and that is activating our youth, because it's the youth that's going to push the first generation. So you're absolutely right. I mean, we must maintain our work, our efforts, in all different areas. You asked me the question, what can the ICV do? I mean, one thing the ICV has done, and this predates October the 7th, we've said to all of our member societies and to Muslim community organisations across Australia, if you are meeting with a politician, an MP or a minister about any issue, it could be an issue completely unrelated to Palestine, that's fine, but make sure Palestine is on your agenda. Because it always is. When the ICV meets with politicians and ministers, one of the items is always Palestine. And it's really important that we maintain that level of political discussion and dialogue going, consistently reinforcing the same message, that Palestine is a core issue for us and that you must respect our aspirations for Australia to take a more even-handed approach and Australia to take meaningful steps towards supporting Palestinian aspirations for self-determination. So that's one thing we're doing. Another thing that we've done, and it's a small thing, but the ICV, we hold an annual dinner this time of year. Every year, it's normally a celebration dinner. We've actually cancelled it for the first time, apart from the COVID years. We've cancelled our annual dinner, and the reason that we've told people is we're cancelling it because of what's happening to our Palestinian brothers and sisters. That's a very powerful message that the ICV is sending. That annual dinner is attended by government ministers, by a whole cross-section of the multi-faith, multicultural communities. The majority of people that attend the annual dinner are not Muslims. So for us actually to cancel that dinner and tell them the reason why we're cancelling it, that sends a very strong message. We're working with MSAs, and I think that there's a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope in the MSAs. They're so active. They're so passionate.
So the MSA, Muslim Student Associations, aren't it?
Yes, that's right. They just need some assistance in terms of direction and how to get organised and a platform to actually magnify their voices. And that's something the ICV can do. I know APAN can do. And we need to continue working that. I know all of the young people that I deal with, through the ICV and otherwise, they want to get active and busy in this space. We just need to provide a means which they can activate themselves and, as I said, guide and direct them.
You're listening to Radical Radio 3CR.
Because the Palestinian fight isn't just the Palestinians' fight, it's all our fight, because it's a fight not just about land, it's about a fight for freedom.
Everybody should be standing here today saying, Free Palestine.
Solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters on behalf of the Gumbaynja Nation, my people who've never ceded their sovereignty.
We should be recognising Palestine as a state and recognising the rights of Palestinians.
3CR. Stay tuned, stay radical.
Adel, we're hearing, all over the front page of all the mainstream media about the rise of anti-Semitism. And, we have to be very clear, there is no room for anti-Semitism in our movement, and anti-Semitism and racism of any type is unacceptable, any sort of hate. But we're hearing about the rise in anti-Semitism. Can you talk to us about Islamophobia, what's happening in that space?
Look, there has been an absolute spike in hate directed towards Muslims, towards Muslim, towards mosques, towards individuals. There's been some, abuse hurled at Muslims in universities, at schools, because of, their perceived support for Palestinians. And I think there's an indirect and subtle form of Islamophobia, also, which I want to speak about, and that is where people feel that they need to self-censor. People need to self-censor because of fear of backlash from their employer or the university or their school because of their support for Palestine. This is a form of subtle Islamophobia, because for people not to be able to express the legitimate views and feeling that if they did that, then they would be attacked because they're a terrorist sympathiser or they're a Muslim who's not welcome. That is an unsafe place to be for Muslims across the board. And I think what we're hearing is that a lot of Muslims are feeling quite unsafe. A lot of Muslim students are feeling unsafe because of the messaging coming out from the institutions in which they attend that is so one-sidedly, supportive of Israel and so one-sidedly condemning of the actions taken by the Palestinians. So this is, as I said, this is an indirect form of Islamophobia, but it is real.
It is very, very real. I attended a meeting in one of the universities and was speaking to the Vice-Chancellor about whether or not they might adopt the flawed definition of anti-Semitism, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. And while we're there, we should talk about Melbourne University just very quickly, who adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and said, don't worry, we're also going to work up a definition of Islamophobia, as if only Muslims would be impacted by the curtailing of free speech around Israel, as if Palestinians couldn't be Christian, Palestinians couldn't be anything else. The Palestinians couldn't be, in fact, Jewish. But I was in this meeting with this Vice-Chancellor, and the student of that university said, I'm Palestinian, and this is, let me tell you about my experience at the university in first year. She very hijabi, an obvious Arabic name. Her lecturer, who was obviously an Australian Jew, said to her, where are you from? And she's an 18-year-old girl in a hijab, first year of uni. She went, Lebanon. There is another layer of racism that exists within the power structures that exist in Australia, and that's that anti-Palestinian racism. But it creates a self-censorship where our children, Palestinian children, don't identify as Palestinian for fear of the repercussions to their career, their academic opportunities, the spaces where they might feel safe in. I know the impact, and certainly somebody described it to me as September 12 from a Muslim's point of view in the policing of. I've had people tell me that they've had calls from ASIO with respect to our activities already, that we've been, othered beyond Peter Dutton's telling us we should leave, or that anybody that protests, quote unquote, under the Hamas flag doesn't belong in this country. Is there a way we can elevate these voices and create some space to them? Are we talking to governments about that?
You and I, and also we attended a meeting with our Premier here in Victoria where we actually spoke about some of these things. And we spoke about the importance of clear messaging and leadership coming from our political leaders. We spoke about, that legitimate protest is something that should not be condemned. It's our right. I think we just have to continue to speak loudly, speak clearly, and speak with very consistent messaging. Whoever we are, supporting Palestine, protesting for Palestine, on the streets or otherwise, we are doing this to support the Palestinian people. It's a humanitarian issue. It's about justice. It's about self-determination. It's got nothing to do with hate. We don't hate anybody. We just have to keep reinforcing that message. And I grew up in a time, I was raised here in Australia. I grew up in a time where mention of the Palestinians would bring mention of the PLO, would bring mention of, hijackings of planes and terrorism. That was the only way in which Palestinians were viewed, through the lens of terrorism and hijacking and Yasser Arafat, etc., etc. Things have changed since then. I mean, we've moved in some ways, but in some ways we haven't moved. There is still this conflation between terrorism and violence and the Palestinian cause. We need to separate that. We need to separate that and make it very clear that there is only one side here who is oppressed, and there's one side doing the oppression. And we need to come back to message, and that's something we spoke about last night, also at the dinner. That's why framing is so important. We cannot accept the framing given to us or that they try to impose upon us. This is about the legitimate aspiration for the Palestinian people. It's a human rights issue. It's a justice issue. It's got nothing to do with hatred of Jews. It's all to do with hatred of Zionism and the genocidal policies of the Israeli government and the Israeli military. So we're just going to be consistent. I mean, it's upon all of us. You, me, all people with positions of influence to keep reinforcing that message with our political leaders, with the media. Media messaging is so important, and it's been so important in relation to Islamophobia and terrorism after September 11. We've had to change our narrative completely in talking to the media. We don't accept the narrative that we have to condemn before we can move on. And I've been so impressed in the way that people who have been interviewed by the media are not willing to play the game of condemning Hamas, and then we can move on in the conversation. No, we're not going to condemn. We're here to talk about what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, their genocide policies, their war crimes. Let's talk about that, and then we'll talk about condemning. So I think it's about framing. I think we're going to be consistent, Nasser, and strong.
Absolutely. That's Adel Salman, the President of the Islamic Council of Victoria. Thanks so very much for joining us, Adel.
Thank you, Nasser. I appreciate it.
You take care, mate. A dear friend of Palestine and a great human being, Mr. Adel Salman. Listeners, if you've been watching the mainstream media or listening to the mainstream media, you'll understand the absolute concerted campaign to discredit and demonise me, to cast me as some sort of villainous anti-Semite, as a supporter of terror, etc. And this is because our voice is cutting through. It is because the call for justice for Palestine is being heard. It's because your participation in our rallies, our rally tomorrow, your participation in letter writing campaigns, in signing on to statements and petitions, into mini and micro actions of walking into your local MP's office and demanding to speak to them and asking why they don't demand an immediate ceasefire, that all of this work that we've been doing collectively is cutting through, and they are desperately trying to make sure that we are not getting heard. And as the most visible spokesperson for Palestine, the attack has been directed vehemently and directly at me and my family. And I want all of you to know, we will not be broken. Palestine will not be conquered. We, an Indigenous people, like our Indigenous brothers and sisters here, are unconquerable. Our connection to our dirt is eternal. It's founded in the fact that our families tended that soil and are buried in that soil that fed us. We will not be beaten. So Zionists could try, fail. We will be here forever. Don't forget to come along tomorrow, 12 o'clock at the State Library. Join tens of thousands. The Guardian said it was the largest protest since the Iraq War, up to 100,000. Let's make it 200,000, Melbourne. Come along, join us. Thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you next week.
Palestine, freedom for Gaza, freedom for every child, mother and father who are being bombed by the bombs of Obama. I'm bursting out tears while you're bursting out with laughter. Freedom for Palestine, freedom for Gaza, freedom for every child, mother and father who are being bombed by the bombs of Obama. I'm bursting out tears while you're bursting out with laughter. Free Palestine and lay down your weapons. This is for the innocent souls that went to heaven, cause what happened in America on 9/11 happened happens in Palestine 24/7. Sing it, free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine. You might think carrying a weapon makes you tougher, but in Palestine, kids carry weapons to protect their mother. I don't mean guns or bombs, I mean stones. They throw them at tanks, but the tanks crush their bones. They shoot against unarmed people with guns and drop bombs on moms right in front of their sons. So why import Israeli products? I would deport them. Killing the innocent, I will never support them. The Zionists and Jews are different types of people. The Jews ain't bad, but the Zionists are evil. Even the rabbis know the Zionists are crazy. We take life for granted, but they're killing newborn babies. Freedom won't be achieved until they feel the same pain. Palestinians shower tears pouring down like rain. Every word is a fact, not one was an opinion. When I say free Palestine, I'm talking for billions. Free Palestine and lay down your weapons. This is for the innocent souls that went to heaven. Cause what happened in America on 9/11 happens in Palestine 24/7. Sing it, free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine. Israel is funded by many, including Obama. Then to say that the bigger threats came from Osama, that's not true. Most of that stuff is lies. They don't show how hundreds die overnight. Can you imagine if that was one of us? Houses, families all blown down to dust. Many being kidnapped and virgins being raped. Many have been injured but none receive any aid. Is taking a life really worth it for just some land? Those who drink from Starbucks surely don't understand. More Israeli goods being sold means more weapons, more bullets that kill Palestinians every second. Freedom won't be achieved until they feel the same pain. Palestinians shower tears pouring down like rain. Every word is a fact, not one was an opinion. When I say free Palestine, I'm talking for billions. Free Palestine and lay down your weapons. This is for the innocent souls that went to heaven. Cause what happened in America on 9/11 happens in Palestine 24/7. Sing it, free, free Palestine, 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 free, free Palestine.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.